How many of these guys should be in a mental institute?
All of them.
And why aren't they?
I don't know, man. That's Georgia, man. Georgia gotta have. So Georgia region don't have a lot of space. See?
What is he saying?
He talking about free time.
How long you been in there for?
4 days. Sir, I have no water in this cell. I have no running water in this cell. This is illegal.
Does he have water?
Does not work.
It probably don't, because a lot of the toilets messed up, but they mess them up. So we do give them like cooler and water and stuff like that.
I'm currently in the room with no water. I have no water in my cell. How can I bathe?
Have a seat.
Push the button as many times you want. The sink does not work. I've been here for 3 months. I can't even get nothing to drink. How can I drink water?
This was a jail that you commanded for many years, and it now has fallen into much disarray. It is now, by all measures, a concrete cage match and it has the inmates involved in it, on top of every single civil servant that is there.
This is the Hill of Justice.
We're back at this again, brother. Return to Atlanta's wildest jails. Tommy G has put out the second version of this video, and this happens to be more, how can I say this, more performative in nature and certainly more exploitive to the individuals of that jail. It's been no secret that this is one of the worst jails in Georgia, and this was a jail that you commanded for many years, and it now has fallen into much disarray. It is now, by all measures, a concrete cage match and it has the inmates involved in it, on top of every single civil servant that is there, along with the correctional officers. It could only be that we have an open pattern of neglect, a lack of leadership, and certainly lawlessness that is so pervasive that we have a podcaster that is getting millions of views by just showing what the conditions are and playing off the theatrics in some ways and the reality of what's going on in that jail. It is now turned into a complete farce at this point in time.
It's turned into a circus.
Right.
And the jail is being ran like a zoo.
Right.
And it's not a zoo. There aren't animals in there, you know?
Correct. And then we have also the specter of what is the public doing about it and what are the institutions in the county and certainly on the federal level doing about this. I have some thoughts. I have some theories. I want to push it towards you.
Sure.
I just want to get your reactions of the video and what were some of the things that stood out to you.
Well, that video's been out now a little over 24 hours and it's already at 1 million views. So it's something that's well documented. I've got mixed emotions about it. I'm glad on one hand that's being put out because people can see the atrocity that's going on there. On the other end, there was an interesting comment, and there's thousands of comments. There's one comment that stood out, said that I can't believe the leaders are crazy enough to let someone go in there and film it. Mm-hmm. And that's a very insightful comment because, I've always said everything is a reflection of leadership. I don't have to meet the mayor or the police chief. All I got to do is drive through the city and I know who they are. I mean, if the city is crazy looking, there's folks running up to your cars, there's people standing in front of stores selling drugs, I already know who the police chief is or the sheriff is. I mean, or vice versa. I don't need to know the warden or the sheriff. All I got to do is walk through the jail and I know who he is. Everything is a reflection of leadership. We have videotape of the jail that was under my command for 15 years, and it was ran like a military boot camp. It was considered the cleanest jail in America. One of the first things I did when I walk in is I would take a deep breath because I didn't want to. The only thing I did to smell is fabuloso. And, it was clean. It was orderly. No one was murdered. Now people are going to die in jail, heart attacks or whatever like that. But when people start getting killed, that's a whole different story there That should not be happening. If a jail's ran right, that should not be happening.
We should be sparking investigations left and right,
Absolutely.
federal and county.
Right. But now we went to a jail that didn't have murders, didn't have any escapes, didn't have any riots during that 15 years. And now they've had several riots refusing to lock down, several escapes. 2 of them were murderers, 7 murders, 2 gang rapes that we know of. I suspect there's more, but 2 gang rapes has been confirmed to the point to where they had to receive surgery. Massive drugs. And see, that's another thing that we got to talk about too. The one thing about the Clayton County Jail is it's very unique. Most jails, the sheriff his office is at the courthouse, and that's somewhere in the county seat. And the jail may be 10, 12, 20, 30 miles away. Well, the Clayton County Jail and the courthouse and the sheriff's office is in one structure. So the whole entire sheriff's office law enforcement agency operates out of this building. You can literally walk from the courthouse to the sheriff's office and inside the jail and never go outside. You don't have to go outside to go around. It's one structure. And of course, we know any jail law enforcement agencies are in and out all the time. But I want you to think about this. How do you run a major drug operation in the same building with judges, the DA, the solicitor, the sheriff's office, all the specialized units are in there, up to and including vice? How do you run a drug operation in the same building where the sheriff's office is? The closest craziness I ever seen close to this in Clayton County is when there was a prostitution house a block away from the Clayton County Police Headquarters, which was there for years. And not just a prostitution house. It was a prostitution house where they had illegal immigrants there against their will, sexual servitude. These girls, there actually were cages and stuff in these places where they couldn't leave. They were forced into sexual servitude. Mm-hmm. But it's a block away from the police station. And none of that stopped. And of course, when I got elected sheriff, I shut it down completely. Not just going in and arrest one and say, hey, whatever. We shut it down and we got those girls back safely home. But that was the worst that I've ever seen. It never made sense to me when I was with the county police how there's a known prostitution house a block away. Literally, you can walk there.
Right.
Okay. But now you got drug dealers selling drugs in a jail that's connected to the entire sheriff's office, up to and including the undercover vice deputies that work there. And nobody can stop it. That's just how bizarre this is. This is what's become a new normal. And that's not normal. For anyone to think that's normal is crazy. You and I have always discussed this. If everyone knows someone's selling drugs there, and the police, and I know someone selling drugs, but they shouldn't be selling drugs. How can we know they're selling drugs there with law enforcement? Mm-hmm. Right. Drug houses only existed in Clayton County if I didn't know they were there, because the minute I was made aware, they got shut down, usually within 72 hours. So how are people selling drugs at the jail now?
Yeah. The video was striking to me on what it did not tell me. And what it did not tell me was who the former sheriff was, how did conditions get to this point? And quite truthfully, there has to be, I take some issue with Tommy G and this, documentary, because I know they're trying to sensationalize what's going on in Clayton County. It's for clicks and so on and so forth. But, he calls himself wanting to go ahead and help one of the inmates. And we just talked about this briefly before we got online.
Right.
One of the inmates who is basically a biohazard mess.
Danger. And yes.
He's a danger to every single soul that's in that building. And yet we have a situation where we put our entertainment first. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because in the broad scope of things, we have lost our way. Even in the sheriff's department there has completely lost their way about how this was put out and should never be doing stuff like this.
I agree. So this inmate's name is Doodoo Brown, which is bizarre. And he gets his name because he throws feces anytime he gets mad. So now they have glamorized him somehow, like he's become the star of the documentary. And Tommy G is actually in this documentary saying that, hey, what if I do a T-shirt with you on it and 10% of it will go to your commissary? How would you feel about that? So we're rewarding an inmate that's a biohazard danger to officers. Now, it's interesting. Here's where it gets real, real interesting. Remember how this all got started. I did a short clip on this on my social media where I talk about, we look at the symptoms, because this video shows the symptoms, but we don't look at the cause. Now, remember, the DA of that county had me indicted for using a restraint chair.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this now. Anytime we found inmates that were destroying things, throwing feces, urine, or something like that, they had to be restrained. And all of it came to a stop. All of it came to a stop. It was a very, very effective tool because, one of the so-called brilliant prosecutors in my case said, can't you just put him in a cell? And I explained, if we put him in a cell, once you open the cell, he can assault an officer, which we've seen videos of that. We saw a video of Mike open a cell and an inmate comes out and punches him. That's what the point where the inmate can throw urine or feces. So people who have shown violence or we know a violent history, they're restrained for safety. So then this novel prosecution comes out from the Clayton County DA that's never happened before in the history of the United States. I'm the only person in the history of the United States ever prosecuted for authorizing someone to be restrained. Think about that now. People weren't touched, they weren't injured or whatever, but the only. Then you take that away. You claim that, hey, we're worried about inmates. We're worried about their constitutional rights. We're so worried. We called 6 of them that never made a complaint that were in jail a year ago and asked them, hey, were you in the chair? Okay, now we're gonna prosecute. We're gonna drop your charges and we're gonna help you see if we can get you some money. And look at the result. These are the symptoms. Now you got a jail that's destroyed. The plumbing has been destroyed. The water isn't working. There's no hot water. That's not because of malfunction. That's because of inmates destroying it. Inmates that would not have destroyed anything under the system we use, where inmates that had destructive behavior, violent behavior, or suicidal behavior were restrained for safety.
Let me go ahead and add this. When it comes down to prosecutions, and particularly with DOJ, when you take a look at what it all takes, what it all involves, is that they will, rare is the time that the DOJ will even come to go ahead and prosecute an individual officer or anyone like that. Rare is a time they do that.
Right.
Generally, it would have to be so systemic in the behavior pattern that's when they'd come in. To speak more into your point, that's
Absolutely.
why this was always should have been a civil matter. This had nothing to do with criminality. But now we find a little bit of situation here. DOJ now has to, and it usually takes about 2 years for this to develop. And you're looking at, they go after institutions. And so now you have all the evidence. You've seen it in, you have even U.S. Senator John Ossoff, who's taking a look at this and putting political pressure and saying, we cannot have this going on in Clayton County Jail. You have multiple civil lawsuits against the jail and the officers there. Yet, DOJ at this point in time is slow walking something that they fast walked with you.
Well, keep in mind now, it's a different DOJ now. That was a former administration. Remember, the U.S. prosecutor that came after me resigned the day the president got inaugurated. Now, that same U.S. prosecutor that came after me, and of course, there's more to the story. People are welcome to read my book, Vigilante Sheriff, The Truth About Corrupt Prosecutors Weaponizing the Criminal Justice System. But this same U.S. prosecutor, Ryan Buchanan, went and looked at the Fulton County Jail and did an investigation. And he said that they were tasing people for being on the phone, assaulting people, physical contact. And he said that this is a violation. We found several violations of civil rights, including the filth in the jail and the conditions they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, but we're going to work with them in the weeks and months to come with a consent decree. So what he essentially said is, we found evidence that officers have tased people, that they've beaten people, and they're violating civil rights, but we're going to correct this in the weeks and days to come. Well, those weeks and days didn't come because a new president came in and he knew he had to get out of there because he was colluding with the DA in Fulton County with that case. So he got out of there ahead of time. Okay, but here's what's interesting about that. No indictment, nothing.
Right.
In my case, the judge had a Freudian slip and said, usually in these cases, it's assaultive behavior, there's tasing, there's beatings, there's false arrests, none of that which occurred in this case. It was a novel case, and novel cases aren't supposed to go before a jury. But this judge was friends with my political opponent, which he did not disclose. This judge's husband used to work for the DA that initiated this. So there's a whole lot of things she didn't disclose. And she coerced a jury that deliberated for 4 days, and there was a whole lot of jury. Called him out twice. The man said, hey, they're screaming at me. They're calling me names. And she sent him back in there. She was determined to get a conviction because of her relationships with my political opponent. Well, look what has happened as a result of that. You know, I hope she's watching. I hope Ryan Buchanan's watching what's happened at the jail. I hope the two prosecutors who thought that they were so brilliant talking about, we got to protect inmates' rights. What are y'all doing now to protect these inmates' rights? The ones that have been killed, stabbed, living in feces, whatever like that.
Why aren't they using CRIPA? Why aren't they using CRIPA?
Exactly.
So just for the audience, just to know, a CRIPA lawsuit is a civil lawsuit that the United States Department of Justice can file on behalf or against the state or the local government. And people in these government institutions are being subjected to all types of unconstitutional nonsense, whether it be, your civil rights for cleanliness, even civil rights for a whole bunch of stuff. So this was passed in 1980.
Now, I'm glad you said that. My attorneys brought up that argument. My attorney said that, okay, if you have issue with how he's using a restraint chair, they could have used CRIPA, but they bypassed that process. Right, they did. Now they didn't do that with the Fulton County Jail, and the officers were tasing people, beating people. In my case, they were being restrained. Right. You can see on video, I touched none of them. There's logs where they were checked every 15 minutes by officers, logs where nurses checked them to make sure they were okay. But that they pushed to a prosecution. Right. And not only did they push it to a prosecution, they made sure it was a felony, because a felony was the only way they could ensure that I couldn't run again, so that the people that my political opponent, who the judge is connected to, Facebook friends with, could stand a chance to win. Mm-hmm. Right. But now, as a result of that, what we're seeing now is a domino effect. The symptoms, the cause, the Clayton County DA, the federal court judge, Eleanor Ross, the U.S. attorney, Ryan Buchanan, that jumped ship the minute the president came in. All of them are gone. But it's so interesting that when they went to another jail where inmates were being beaten and tased, we can work with them. Another one, they're just restrained. Hey, no, we have to send him to prison. And you see the hypocrisy in it.
That's when I'm getting
right.
There is too much right now.
Exactly. You see the hypocrisy.
And both sides. I'm not saying that it's just for, if you take a look this on a political lens, it is on both sides, and it's hurt all. It hurt you. It hurt even the citizens of Clayton County.
Well, it's hurt them worse. Okay, 7 inmates killed. What do you think about their families? The first inmate that was killed was accidentally killed. They didn't intend on killing him. The first one, but it counts, unfortunately, as a homicide, like involuntary manslaughter. The first one is he's suicidal. He's trying to jump and kill himself. Well, the officers are holding him down. But guess what? They don't have anything to restrain him in, because, hey, we can't use a restraint chair anymore because, Buchanan will indict us for that. Tasha Mosley will indict us for that. So they hold him down to suffocate him and he dies. So that's the first blood on their hands for this novel and wrongful prosecution. That's the first. That guy would have been alive today if they were still using the restraint chair. Okay, because that's what the restraint chair was for. The rest of these guys, if you look at all the other murders, all of them were involved in things prior to the murder where they would have been restrained, so it wouldn't have happened. They would have been restrained and moved to another area, so they would have never got to kill their victims. It worked. And all because of political prosecution. We got gang rapes. We've got 7 murders. We've got extortion. You know, look at the mothers being extorted. Cash at me now. We're going to beat or stab your son.
Correct.
Look at the drugs that's flowing into jail. All because of a novel prosecution. So, you know, the people involved from Eleanor Ross to Ryan Buchanan, Tasha Mosley, Jeff Turner, the 2 prosecutors, they both got some weird Brent, Gray Brent, whatever their name is. I think both of them got a Brent name. Stand up and take a bow. Because when you see this video, this is what y'all caused. Right. Look at all of the people's lives that y'all affected with a novel political prosecution that you claim you were so concerned about inmates. I hope you're concerned with all these ones that are dying and stabbing and living in filth, because they weren't doing that before. Right.
And I get that the DOJ may want to go ahead and be a little bit quiet about this. But the quiet part is out loud now. You could have issued a findings letter at the very least.
But remember now, all of this killing and stuff started while Buchanan was still U.S. attorney. It started while all of that was still in place. Well, now it's being replaced. And I don't know how much longer this will go on, because I don't believe the new administration is going to let this pass by.
Well, I'm not saying that it's going to let them pass by.
Right.
But there are certainly things they could do in expediency. You had, for Christ's sakes, a U.S. senator saying, this is ungodly. This is terrible.
Oh, I agree. But when he did that, he initiated that while Ryan Buchanan was still there, before he tucked tail and ran. So you know, there's a process that goes on when there's a change, and it takes longer than people think. Like, for instance, we just got a new U.S. Marshal. Well, that U.S. Marshal was appointed under the other administration. And I don't know why, but it takes about a year in before these folks start getting replaced. So
I get it.
But all of that stuff started under those folks.
You're not telling those 6 families it's a process.
Oh,
that's my point.
I agree. I agree with you on that. Right.
And so, you got to negotiate at least a consent decree or some type of settlement.
No, I'm not telling them it's a process. What I'm telling you is, when this all started and when it was being brought to the attention, it was being brought to attention to the same people who prosecuted me. Mm-hmm. And they're gone. So now they're probably going to have to start this process again. And then, of course, that senator you're talking about, Oscoff, he probably doesn't, based on all of the ranting and raving, may not even have the connections with the new people coming in yet. So that process is going to have to start again, if that makes sense.
Well, I will tell you this, that in the defense of DOJ, because they're obliterated on the national level, and everybody's left. So now you don't have prosecutors to go after Clayton County Jail. And this is the problem of what goes on in politics.
But let me say this. That's probably a good thing. I hope those prosecutors involved in my case left, because they lied to a grand jury. They lied to the jury. They were so involved in lawfare and going after politicians and celebrities that they weren't looking for any criminals at that point anyway. So now that's my point. Now that they're gone and some prosecutors are coming in, that's probably what it's going to take for this to get some attention. That old crew was sitting around playing around with people like the Clayton County DA, trying to figure out how can we stop the sheriff from winning re-election and how can we get involved in that. So now that those folks are gone, I don't see it, because they weren't doing anything anyway but a bunch of political prosecutions. I wasn't impressed. So like I said, I think it's going to take another group coming in now, and they get settled. And then when this is brought to their attention, I think we'll start to see some movement on it.
Well, time is ticking. We're almost a year and a half, right?
I know.
And so we're talking also about, somebody can also go ahead and seek an injunction of some sort, that they can go ahead and order immediate reforms, at least. And federal monitoring. What happened to federal monitors?
We need a monitor at this jail. We do.
That's what my point is.
We do.
We got to have one of those. That's quick. You can do that fast.
But what I'm saying is, the paperwork and stuff that was being submitted before needs to be submitted again because it fell on deaf ears with Ryan Buchanan. Ryan Buchanan wasn't really interested in doing anything with a jail. He proved that with Fulton County. He's like, well, we found these violations, but we're going to work with them. And then next thing you look, he's gone because he tucked tail and ran when the election didn't go his way. So now that those type of people like him are gone, this is our hope now. Because he wasn't going to do anything anyway. He had an opportunity to do something back then and didn't do it. He was only interested in coming after me or people like me or getting with the Fulton County District Attorney to collude on that mess. They weren't really trying to go after any, they were more interested in the Chrisleys and stuff like that. They were actually interested in real crime and what's really going on.
Right.
So now, right.
I think the reason that we are big on the monitors is that they could go ahead and conduct inspections. We know that they could go ahead and review the deaths in custody. They could go ahead and track compliance, reports, and so on and so forth, even medical reports. So this audit all types of, use of force cases. I mean, this would be so helpful for right now, building a case, but also to have some immediate relief there. And I just see that's just haphazard. We don't do that.
And let me tell you, it's even deeper than that. There's other things that surface. Fraudulent overtime, which is not interesting. I had some deputies steal $1.2 million in overtime. Got rid of all of them, sent it to the DA's office. They were never prosecuted. Okay, now they found fraudulent overtime here for thousands of hours that no one could possibly humanly work. So it had to be more. It probably was triple what they tried to steal under me and what I tried to get prosecuted. And no movement, nothing from the DA's office, nothing from anybody else. Now they're finding all type of stuff. $30,000 spent on tailor-made suits. More than $50,000 spent on a party. Money for the Disney Channel bundle set or whatever that you get for Disney and Netflix. And obviously, from looking at the video, I didn't see any inmates saying, hey, we're getting ready to go watch Disney.
Right.
So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of misspending that's obviously illegal. There's a lot of, in all of that. And so the money that could be spent to fix the toilets is being spent for tailor-made suits. But then you got to look at this. Even if he spent the money, they're going to break it again because they have absolutely no control. And that brings up one other thing I want to get into too. They said something at this video we got to go over. They said that 40 positions was cut from his budget and he needs $5 million to fix the jail. Okay, that's a lie. There's been no positions taken from him. He asked for 40 more people. It was denied. First of all, he has enough people. Okay, when you give your girlfriends, when you give your friends, when you give your family correctional officer jobs, but don't put them in the jail, that's what shortens the man power there. I know for a fact there's enough people to man the jail because he has more people now than I did when I was there. So there's more than enough, but you got to put them in the jail. You can't hire a correctional officer and tell them, okay, go do a massage or go be a preacher. You don't have to go in the jail. And you leave people down there with no backup. All right. Then even if you gave him $5 million and he actually used it for repairs at the jail, you could clearly see from this video, he doesn't have any control. So they're going to continue to destroy it. The graffiti in there is unimaginable. We had a jail with no graffiti. Matter of fact, if we went in a cell and saw graffiti, that officer was in trouble because obviously you didn't do your cell check. If you walk in a cell physically every hour like you're supposed to inspect the walls. That way this wasn't there before. Now there's so much graffiti in there, it's ridiculous. There was actually one group that wrote the wall, their rules for the dorm on the wall.
That's correct.
Which is, well, hell, at least they got rules. I got to give them credit for that. Obviously, they took more initiative because the sheriff's office didn't write rules and put them on the wall for everybody else to follow. So, but the fact that they wrote it on the wall and that's considered normal. The fact that this whole thing is the new normal is bizarre. It's not normal to sell drugs next to a law enforcement agency. It's not normal for graffiti to be all over. If that's normal, then you really got abnormal leadership.
Right. Well, we got rules too, and nobody's paying attention to them. And it's called the U.S. Constitution. particularly
Right.
the 8th and the 14th Amendment. If you take a look at the 8th Amendment, we're talking about protections against cruel and unusual punishment. If we're taking a look
Absolutely.
at the 14th portion of it, we're talking about due process of rights for pretrial detainees. We have individuals in their 2, 3, 4 years, county jail, not prison, county jail, that's waiting for trial. I mean, we are violating them viciously in that county.
So now that goes back to our DA, which that's another issue. Who started this whole thing anyway? At the end of the day, like I said, if you want to look, we're talking about the symptoms, but if you want to look at the cause, okay, she's not getting all these indictments through and not doing all the stuff she's supposed to be doing, probably because she's too busy worrying about coming after me for a restraint chair, worry about other stuff. Meanwhile, and I'm sure we'll cover it soon, and we have, there's some major crimes that she's covered up and haven't prosecuted. Not just the $1.2 million
Right.
that I sent her that the deputy stole in overtime, but she's covered up an array of other crimes and theft at the county commission and stuff like that.
I'm with you on that. But
Right.
this is where DOJ fails. And they're responsible. They are to enforce that law, those laws, the 8th Amendment and the 14th, and supersede her.
Right. But remember, she's the DA of the county. It should start with her. She started the
It
case
should
with me.
start, but the DOJ
Right.
is not beholden to her.
But the DOJ didn't come to Clayton County. The 6 inmates did not go to Clayton County and say, hey, I was in a restraint chair. She did that. She initiated it. She went to the DOJ and say, hey, I think we have a problem. Okay, well, there's drugs being sold in the jail. There's urine and feces from the backed up toilet. There's bed bugs. We don't see her going down there now.
Right.
Remember,
right.
she initiated that. The feds didn't come down there on their own, and 6 inmates did not go to them. Matter of fact, when it started, they went to them. They looked out of 600 restraint care cases and only chose the ones with my name on it and went and knocked on their door and said, hey, were you in the chair? Hey, I think your constitutional rights have been violated. See, a lot of people don't know that. This was initiated. Right. That's how they went there. And a lot of people don't know it started over a guy running against me who one of his campaign workers had to be placed in the chair because he's crazy and violent. Right. And a lot of people don't know that. Right. So she initiated that. You know, remember the feds are usually brought in, and they're usually brought in by the chief prosecutor, which is the DA, by the chief of police or the sheriff. Well, hell, we know the sheriff ain't gonna go ask for him because he's a problem. He is the problem here at the jail. Mm-hmm. But why hasn't she taken the initiative to go and see them and say, listen,
she's too weak.
Weak? She wasn't weak when she tried to make a big deal about 6 inmates and let the whole other 600 that were restrained go. What about them?
Well, she always goes under the lowest lying fruit of the tree. And then you have here's the other issue too. Mm-hmm. I'm here to tell you, point blank, my opinion. That sheriff is going not to jail. He is going to prison. Mark my words.
You're probably right about that.
I'm letting you know that right now.
You're probably right about that, but you're right. Somebody else is going to be. We know she's not. Listen, there was an inmate after I left that was allegedly beaten in a restraint chair. They settled the case for $5 million. No one went to prison. She didn't indict anyone. She didn't bring in the feds. They just settled it, and it quietly went away. Now, if this guy was beaten that bad, it was all over the news or whatever. Mm-hmm. Who are the 2 deputies that did this, and why didn't our DA prosecute them, or why didn't she or the sheriff run to the to and say, hey, can y'all take this case over? Sure. And whoever they are probably still working there.
Yeah.
And that's the type of craziness we're dealing with. And that's how we ended up with this bizarre documentary. And the whole situation is bizarre. Right. But it all starts back with the DA.
Right. And I think that's where we'll go ahead and land this plane today. Is, definitely about public accountability, what that looks like, and certainly the exploitive nature of this second video that is filming of course, the inmates of Clayton County Jail, the despair that you see for each and every one of them, the victims, they're victims too, I don't care what anybody says. There's victims in there too. And
Yes.
of course, you got a whole bunch of people who are also predatory. But at the same time, we must do a better job. And I think that when we talk about truth and we go ahead and put, matters like this to people who are in those positions of authority, we can't skip nobody in this. And I love this show for that, because we don't. We talk about all of them in that. Many of you are definitely watching the show. Many of you are supporting us. I mean, we see the numbers all the time. If you could kindly go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification button. We see you watching. Just hit the notification button. We really appreciate it. So without further ado, brother, you brought it in this episode. Thank you once again.
All right, my man.